I never expected a 5-day silence to change everything. Yet, here I am, Andrew Harper. And this is the story of how a relationship strategy backfired so spectacularly that it didn't break me. It set me free. It was a dull Tuesday afternoon in the heart of York, the kind of day when the gray sky feels like it's trying too hard to be dramatic. I ducked into Brew & Co., a tiny coffee shop tucked between a bookshop and a florist on King Street, just to grab an espresso. That's when I spotted Ellie, tall, with long auburn hair that caught the dim light just right, wearing a soft cream blouse that hinted at the curve of her collarbone, paired with a sleek black pencil skirt and heels that clicked softly against the wooden floor. She was surrounded by her usual circle of friends: Madison, a fiery redhead with a sharp bob; Harper, petite with a pixie cut and an ever-present leather jacket; and Quinn, tall and blonde, with an almost mischievous sparkle in her eyes. I was about to cross the room when I heard my name. Andrew, carried lightly but unmistakably. My heart did this stupid little flip. Ellie was talking about me, to them. I didn't know he was that sensitive, she said, voice low but amused. I just froze. They were dissecting the argument from 2 nights before, the one where I'd actually dared to open up about feeling distant, disconnected, vulnerable. Madison leaned in, fingers drumming on the table. You can't let him think that's okay. You have to set boundaries. Harper, scrolling through her phone like she was fact-checking, added, My therapist says when men try to control what you share with your support system, it's a red flag. Quinn nodded eagerly. You know what works? Just stop talking to him until he apologizes. I left without my coffee, the bitter taste forgotten in my mouth. The idea that what I'd shared, the raw stuff, was now fodder for gossip over lattes stung worse than I expected. That evening, back in our flat in Clifton, I tried to talk it through calmly. I heard you at Brew & Co. today, I said, voice steady but cautious. I wasn't eavesdropping, but I walked in while you were talking about our argument. Ellie looked up from her phone, eyes narrowing. So, you were spying on me? No, that's not it. Those were private things between us. I felt vulnerable sharing them with you and hearing them repeated to your friends. They're my friends, she snapped. Of course I can have a support system. I'm not saying you can't, I'm just asking if some things could stay between us. Her expression changed, like she'd rehearsed this moment, like she'd been waiting for it. Then, with a slow, deliberate breath, she said, I think I need some space to think if this relationship is healthy for me. Want to talk about it? No, I don't want to talk. Period. She walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. The next morning she passed me without a glance. No good morning, no eye contact. She brewed her coffee, grabbed her keys, and left. I texted. Nothing. I tried again in the evening. Silence. By day 3, I left a note on the kitchen counter. Can we at least discuss how long this is going to last? She threw it away in front of me. That's when I knew this wasn't space. This was a strategy. Dinner that night was a performance. Ellie came home with bags of groceries, cooked an elaborate meal, for one, set the table for herself, ate slowly while I sat on the couch, then washed only her dishes. The whole thing felt staged, like she was playing to an invisible audience. The next day I started sorting my things, not packing, just sorting. The flat felt quieter. I slept better without the constant tension of guessing her moods. By day 5, I was packing, methodically, calmly. Each folded shirt was a weight off my shoulders. Ellie came home, saw the boxes, and broke the silence with 4 words. Aren't you going to say sorry? For what? I'm the happiest I've been in months. Her face crumpled, disbelief and panic mingling. You what? I asked you not to share private things. You responded by shutting me out. And these last few days, I've had peace. You can't be serious. I'm more serious than ever. I'm moving out. This is insane. You're throwing away 3 years because of a few days of silence. You chose the silence. I'm choosing what comes after. She called Madison right there, putting her on speaker. He's packing. What do I do? Madison's voice was calm, coaching. Hold firm. He's testing you. He'll come crawling back. I kept folding shirts. Ellie held the phone like proof of her victory. That night I slept on the couch. My choice. The next few days I kept packing, researching studios in York's Wash Park, places with month-to-month leases. Ellie started sabotaging my boxes, scattering clothes, dropping my favorite mug until it shattered. I packed on. A co-worker, Patricia, noticed the change. You seem different. Less stressed, I admitted. I was surprised. You're going through a breakup, but you seem better. I was married to someone who kept me constantly on edge for 5 years. The day I left, I felt lighter. And the silence that was supposed to break me, it freed me instead. 5 days, 5 silent days, and now I'm just getting started. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds of my new studio apartment in Wash Park, casting long, lazy shadows across the sparse furniture. I stretched, feeling the unfamiliar luxury of waking without dread. Ellie's silence had been a storm, but now in this small, sunlit room, with its mismatched cushions and a lone potted fern on the windowsill, I was learning what calm felt like. I dressed casually, jeans, a soft gray t-shirt, and my battered trainers, and made my way to the kitchen. The kettle clicked on, and I poured myself a cup of tea, savoring the warmth against my hands. No one was around to judge my choice of mug, no one scrutinizing my every move. I decided to take a walk through the nearby Victoria Park, the autumn leaves crunching underfoot, crunching like the brittle remnants of what Ellie and I had shared. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke, the kind of smell that feels like home if you let it. As I wandered, my phone buzzed. A message from Madison. My stomach dropped. You're really going to abandon her like this? I stared at the screen, fingers hovering. I typed back carefully. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm leaving a situation where someone chose silence over communication. Sent. Almost immediately, Harper chimed in. She was just setting boundaries. I exhaled slowly. Boundaries involve talking. This was punishment. The final text came from Quinn. We were helping her. You don't understand. I didn't reply. The messages felt like arrows, but I was done playing their game. Later that day, while grabbing lunch at a nearby deli, I bumped into Patricia, the co-worker who'd noticed the change in me. She smiled, holding a sandwich half-eaten. Hey, Andrew, how are you holding up? Better than I expected, I admitted. It's strange. I thought breaking up would feel like a loss, but honestly, it feels like I found something. She nodded knowingly, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. Sometimes the hardest thing is to let go, but peace, that's worth fighting for. Our conversation was interrupted by a text from Ellie's friends again. They were relentless, sending messages that blurred the line between concern and harassment. I decided to block their numbers. I needed space, not just from Ellie, but from the entire drama orbiting her. That evening, I went to the local gym for my usual treadmill run. The rhythmic pounding of my feet against the belt helped drown out the mental noise. Halfway through, I caught a glimpse in the mirror. There was Ellie walking in with Madison, both casting glances my way. Madison's animated whispers seemed like a rehearsed script, coaching Ellie on what to say if I approached. I finished my run, grabbed my water bottle, and slipped out through the side door. As I left, I heard Madison mutter something sharp, frustrated, probably about me dodging their trap. In the parking lot, I sat in my car, the engine off. 6 weeks ago, I might have sprinted after her, desperate to fix everything. Now, I felt only relief. I smiled to myself. Freedom tasted better than any apology. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the cinema alone. I picked a random action film playing at the Odeon, bought a ticket, and settled into the back row with a tub of overpriced popcorn. The explosions on screen were loud, chaotic, and utterly captivating. For 2 hours, I didn't check my phone once. Walking back to my car under the street lamps, I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done something just for me. No negotiations, no second guessing. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Back at the apartment, I pulled out an old notebook and started writing. Nothing fancy, just thoughts, patterns I'd missed, the countless times I'd bent myself to avoid setting off Ellie's defensiveness or her friend's judgment. As I wrote, a joke popped into my head. I should have been a contortionist with all the twists and turns I did, just to keep the peace. Smiling to myself, I knew this was only the beginning of reclaiming my life. But deep down, a question lingered. How much of what I'd lost was truly mine to get back? 5 days of silence had revealed everything. And what came next? Well, that's a story for another time. The next morning, the quiet in my apartment was profound, so different from the tension that had filled the air at our old flat in Clifton. I was sipping my black coffee, eyes wandering over the half-assembled bookshelf I'd started the night before, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ellie. "You took my blender." I blinked. Seriously. The blender. I stared around the kitchen, the one I'd used every morning for protein shakes and disastrous attempts at soup. I replied calmly, "I bought that blender. I have the receipt. Besides, I used it more." No answer. Then came another message. "That's not how ownership works." I almost laughed. Ownership? I'd been in this relationship for 3 years, and now it boiled down to a blender dispute. It was absurd, but also telling. Later that day, as I was leaving work, I ran into Harper, one of Ellie's friends from the group. She looked hesitant, like she wanted to say something but wasn't sure how. "You seem different," she said, folding her arms. "Less stressed." "Yeah, I'm good," I said, smiling. "Actually, I'm better than good." She nodded. "You know, I was surprised. Usually, breakups are messy, but you seem to have moved on." "Not moved on," I corrected her. "Moved forward. There's a difference." She smiled a little wistfully. "I hope it stays that way." That evening, I returned to the flat to find my favorite mug shattered on the kitchen tiles. It was the one with the faded Union Jack, a souvenir from a trip to London that Ellie had never liked. She stood nearby, watching me with a strange mixture of expectation and something like regret. I knelt to sweep up the shards, careful not to cut myself. "No reaction?" she asked. I shrugged. It was just a mug. Things break, people break, but some things can be fixed, others can't. She said nothing. I kept packing. A few days later, my phone rang unexpectedly. It was my mum. "Ellie called," she said, voice low and worried. I frowned. "Why?" She sounded upset. "Said you left without explanation." I sighed. "Did she mention the 5 days she refused to speak to me?" "No," Mum admitted, "but she wanted me to get in touch." I appreciated my mum's neutrality. She listened to the whole story without judgment. "Well," she said finally, "you can't build a relationship with someone who sees communication as a weapon." Her words settled over me like warm tea. That week, a text from Quinn popped up. "Ellie's in the hospital, Denver General. They're asking for you." My gut twisted. The timing felt off, but I couldn't ignore it. I drove to Denver General and asked at the ER desk, "Is there an Eleanor Thompson admitted?" They shook their heads. "No one by that name is here." I texted Quinn. She's not here. Maybe she's been discharged. I sat in my car, the cold air biting through the windows, realizing they'd faked a medical emergency to get me to come running. Some games cut deeper than others. Around that time, I met Connor, Ellie's ex, at a local brewery in Rhino. He was a big guy with a rough beard and a knowing smile. "Hey, man," he said, clapping me on the back. "Heard about you and Ellie." "Yeah," I muttered. "It's been something." Connor nodded. "She did the same to me. 2 weeks of silence because I couldn't go to one of her friends' birthdays. Her friends said I was dismissive." "Did you go back after?" "Twice. Took me 3 breakups to see the pattern." That conversation was a punch to the gut, but also a confirmation. I wasn't alone. That night I met with a tenant rights attorney to understand my options about the lease and harassment. "You're both on the lease until September," he said. "Legally, you must keep paying your half unless she takes over or you sublet." "What about the harassment?" "Document everything. If it escalates, we can pursue a civil harassment order. For now, it's annoying but not actionable." He suggested formal written communication to establish boundaries. I left feeling armed, not just with knowledge, but with a plan. Later, I stopped by IKEA, bought a proper bed frame, a lamp I actually liked, and a bookshelf big enough for all my books. Assembling the furniture alone, I blasted music I knew Ellie hated, loud, unapologetic rock that made the walls vibrate. I smiled. For the first time in years, I was making this place my own. But even with all this progress, a shadow lingered. Because deep down, I wondered, how much longer would the games last? How long before the silence returned? And when it did, would I be ready to stand my ground again? Sometimes peace feels fragile, like a glass teetering on the edge of a shelf. And sometimes you just have to decide whether to catch it or let it shatter. The next move was mine. But what would I choose? That Saturday morning, the sunlight poured through the tall sash windows of my new place in Wash Park, casting golden patterns on the pale walls. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my shirt, a simple navy button-down that felt like a quiet rebellion against the tailored suits Ellie preferred. My jeans were comfortably worn, and my sneakers looked like they'd seen better days. But they were mine, unpolished and real. I was about to head out when my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Madison. "You're doing the wrong thing, Andrew. You don't get to just walk away." I stared at the screen, fingers tightening around the phone. I typed back, "I'm not walking away. I'm choosing to stop running in circles." She didn't reply. Determined to reclaim my space, I decided to meet up with Trevor, my brother's friend, and a steady presence during this chaos. We agreed on a low-key pub, the Black Dog, nestled in a quiet corner of York's historic district. The kind of place with dark wooden beams, a fireplace that smelled faintly of peat, and a regular crowd that was more interested in pints than drama. Trevor was already there when I arrived, nursing a pint of amber ale. He looked up and grinned. "You look lighter, mate, like you finally shrugged off a really heavy coat." I laughed, taking a seat. "Feels that way, like I've been holding my breath for 3 years and just exhaled." He nodded, eyes thoughtful. "I've noticed. You don't check your phone every 5 minutes anymore. You're here. Really here." We talked about everything and nothing, work, music, the ridiculousness of adult life, and I felt a flicker of something I hadn't in a while. Hope. Later that week at work, my manager asked to see me. My heart sank for a moment, expecting bad news. Instead, she smiled. "Your productivity's up. You're volunteering for projects, staying late. Everything okay?" I laughed softly. "Better than okay. I ended a relationship that wasn't working." She nodded knowingly. "I went through something similar. You'd be amazed how much energy those situations drain." She mentioned a possible promotion, and I left her office feeling validated in a way I hadn't in years. Even strangers could see the difference. One chilly evening, I ran into Connor again at a local brewery. He pulled me aside, voice low. Ellie's pattern isn't new. She treats relationships like chess, moves and counter-moves, strategies to win or lose. I swallowed hard. I'm done playing. Connor clapped me on the shoulder. Good. Took me a while to say that. Back at the flat, a note slid under the door caught my eye. It was from the landlord. Ellie had filed a complaint claiming I'd taken items that belonged to the apartment. I gathered my receipts, photos of packed boxes, and a timeline of our interactions before I left. When I met with the landlord, he nodded gravely. Not the first time we've seen this in breakups. You're covered on your end. Relief washed over me. That weekend, I took a deep breath and deleted our entire text thread. 3 years of messages, memories, arguments, all gone with a single tap. It felt like shedding a second skin. But just as I thought the storm was over, Ellie showed up at my workplace during lunch. Her mascara was smudged, hair slightly disheveled, and she stood in the public plaza outside the office building, arms crossed like a shield. "How can you just cut me off like this? Like I meant nothing?" she demanded. I stayed calm. You chose silence over communication. I chose peace over chaos. Both choices were ours. She took a step closer, voice trembling. "I was going to talk to you. I just needed time." I shook my head. "You had 5 days of silence." I had 5 days to realize I was happier without the drama. Her eyes flashed with anger and hurt. 3 years means nothing? It meant something, I said softly. But the last 2 months showed me what the next 30 years would be like. I chose differently. She called Madison, who arrived moments later, their whispers sharp and urgent. I turned and walked back into the building, leaving them to their conspiracy. As I climbed the stairs to my desk, I felt a strange lightness. The weight of 3 years wasn't gone, but it was finally lifting. And somewhere beneath the noise, a quiet voice whispered, "This is just the beginning." Because sometimes the hardest goodbyes lead to the most unexpected new beginnings. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of my studio, casting stripes of light across the faded carpet. I sat at the small kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea, the steam curling lazily into the cool air. Outside, the city of York was waking up. Buses rattling down cobblestone streets, early joggers looping around the park, shopkeepers unlocking their doors. I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. My phone buzzed. Another message from Madison. "You'll regret this. You're throwing away everything." I smiled to myself. Some people just can't accept that you're not playing their game. I typed back simply, "I'm choosing peace over chaos." Then blocked her number. Later that afternoon, I met up with Trevor again. We sat at the Black Dog, the smell of roasting meat and spilled ale wrapping around us like a comforting blanket. Trevor's easy grin was a balm. "Ever think about how much energy we waste trying to fix people who don't want to be fixed?" he asked, swirling his pint. All I could do was nod. "Yeah. I spent 3 years trying to fix a relationship that was broken from the start." He laughed. "Sounds like you finally found your off switch." For the first time in ages, I laughed too. That evening I walked through Victoria Park, the trees a riot of amber and gold. The crisp air filled my lungs, and for once I wasn't calculating every word or watching for signs. I was just me. I spotted a young couple holding hands, their laughter light and easy. The woman wore a flowing scarf that caught the breeze. The man's jacket was rumpled, sleeves pushed up to reveal tattooed forearms. No games, no strategies, just honest affection. I thought, maybe that's what I'm looking for. Back home, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Ellie. Her handwriting was shaky but deliberate. "Andrew, I'm sorry. I thought silence would fix things. It didn't. Maybe I was scared. I don't know if we can ever go back, but I hope you find what you're looking for." I folded the note carefully, a strange ache settling in my chest. Maybe forgiveness was possible someday, not for us, but for the ghosts we left behind. The next day I ran into Quinn at the grocery store. She looked surprised to see me. "Andrew," she said quietly, "I think you're better off." I nodded. "Thanks. I'm finally starting to believe that." She smiled, a real one without the usual edge. "Good. You deserve that." Weeks passed. The harassment faded like a bad dream. The silence I'd feared became a space to breathe, to grow. I signed the lease transfer papers. Ellie would keep the flat. I would keep my freedom. On a chilly Saturday morning, I met my parents at a local cafe. Mum brought a basket of fresh bread and fruit. Dad talked about his garden. We laughed over burnt toast and spilled coffee. It was ordinary. It was perfect. That night, alone in my studio, I turned on the music loud, something wild and untamed, the kind Ellie never liked. I danced like no one was watching, each beat shaking loose the last remnants of the past. And as I caught my breath, I realized I hadn't just escaped a toxic relationship. I'd found myself. But just as I was settling into this new chapter, a message popped up on my phone. From an unknown number. "You don't know the whole story." My heart skipped, because sometimes when you think the past is behind you, it has a way of reaching back. And this time it wasn't just about silence or broken blenders. Something darker was coming, and I wasn't sure I was ready. The unknown number's message hung on my screen like a shadow I couldn't shake. "You don't know the whole story." I stared at it, the words pulsing with a quiet menace. Was this a prank? A threat? Or a twisted invitation to reopen wounds I'd just begun to heal? I didn't respond. Instead, I pocketed my phone and headed out for a walk along the River Ouse, where the water whispered secrets as it wound through York's ancient streets. The chill air bit at my cheeks, a reminder that some things couldn't be softened with time alone. As I walked, my mind replayed the last few months, Ellie's silence, the staged dinners, the broken mug, the constant games played by her and her friends. The manipulation wasn't just emotional, it was strategic, calculated. But who was behind this message? Madison, Harper, Quinn, or someone else lurking in the background? I stopped at a bench near the riverbank, the willow branches swaying overhead like silent sentinels. I sat down, pulling my jacket tighter around me, and took a deep breath. The past was refusing to stay buried. Later that evening, I met up with Trevor at our usual spot, the Black Dog. His easy smile faltered when I showed him the message. "Looks like the game's not over yet," he said, voice low. "I thought I left all that behind," I admitted. "But maybe the silence was just the opening move." Trevor nodded. "People like that don't quit easily. They want control, not closure." I ran a hand through my hair, frustration building. "I don't want to get pulled back in, but I can't just ignore this." He leaned forward. "Then you need to be smarter. Set your boundaries, document everything, and don't let them bait you." I swallowed, feeling the weight of his words. The next day at work, I tried to focus, but my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You think you're free, but freedom comes at a price." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. Someone was watching, waiting. I showed the messages to Patricia, my co-worker who'd become a quiet ally. She frowned, eyes sharp. "This isn't just harassment," she said. "This is intimidation." Her words made it real. That night I sat at my kitchen table, the soft glow of my desk lamp illuminating the letter Ellie had left weeks ago. I traced the shaky handwriting, wondering if she knew how deep the web of manipulation really was. I poured myself a drink and stared out the window at the city lights, the distant hum of traffic, a constant backdrop. The silence I'd once craved now felt fragile, like glass ready to shatter. Then, just as I was gathering my thoughts, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Heart pounding, I peeked through the peephole. No one, just an empty doorstep. But there, lying in the rain, was a small package wrapped in brown paper, tied with a crimson ribbon. I picked it up, hands trembling, and brought it inside. Inside I found a single photo of Ellie, smiling but with eyes that didn't reach her smile. Behind her, barely visible, was a shadowy figure watching, and scrawled on the back in messy handwriting, "Look closer." My blood ran cold, because sometimes the silence isn't just absence of sound. Sometimes it's the loudest warning of all. And the question wasn't if I'd have to face the past again, but what truths were hiding in its shadows. The game had changed, and I was no longer just a player. I was a target. The photo weighed heavy in my hands, its glossy surface cold and foreign. Ellie's smile was almost enchanting, too perfect, too practiced, like a mask hiding something darker beneath. I studied the shadow lurking behind her, blurry but unmistakable, a silent watcher in the background of her staged happiness. My mind raced. Was this some twisted warning, an accusation, or a plea for help masked in mystery? I shuffled through memories I'd tried to bury, the arguments, the silences, the carefully crafted performances she put on for her friends, and now this unsettling message from the shadows. I knew I couldn't ignore it. The next morning I called Trevor first thing. He was already up, his voice rough from sleep, but steady. "You're not imagining things," I said, voice tight. "This isn't just harassment. Something's off, something deeper." Trevor agreed. "We need to find out who's behind this before it goes further. You're not alone, mate." Together, we started piecing things together. Texts, messages, the timing of Ellie's friends' appearances, the sudden escalations. Patterns emerged like a dark map. Later that day, I met with Patricia at work. She pulled me aside, her expression serious. "I did some digging," she said quietly. "There's been talk. Rumors about Ellie and her friends, how they manipulate situations. But there's something else. Someone new entered the picture recently. Someone who's been stirring the pot." My heart sank. Could this be the shadow in the photo? A new player in a game I never signed up for? As evening fell, I sat alone in my apartment, the weight of uncertainty pressing down. I scrolled through old messages, searching for clues, but the more I looked, the more tangled the web became. The silence that once brought relief now felt like a trap. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. Secrets don't stay buried forever. I swallowed hard. What secrets? Whose secrets? And how much was I willing to uncover? Determined not to be a pawn, I decided to confront Ellie's friends directly. I arranged to meet Madison at a quiet cafe in the city center, hoping for answers, or at least a confrontation. Madison arrived dressed in a sharp blazer and dark jeans, her fiery hair tied back in a sleek ponytail. She smiled, but there was no warmth in her eyes. "You're looking for the truth, Andrew?" she asked, voice smooth but edged. "Be careful what you wish for." I held her gaze. I deserved to know what's been going on. Her smile flickered. Sometimes the truth is the most dangerous game of all. Walking away from the cafe, I realized this wasn't just about a broken relationship anymore. It was about trust, betrayal, and the shadows lurking behind every smile. And as the city lights blurred around me, one thing became crystal clear. The silence was over, but the real story was just beginning. That night, the city felt different, darker, as if the familiar streets of York had transformed into a labyrinth of secrets and half-truths. I sat by the window of my studio, the glow of street lamps casting long shadows across the peeling paint and scattered unpacked boxes. Madison's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes the truth is the most dangerous game of all. I poured myself a drink, the amber liquid catching the light, and tried to steady the storm swirling inside me. Who was that shadow in the photo? What secrets were buried beneath the surface of everything Ellie and her friends had spun? The next morning, I decided to dig deeper. I started by reaching out to Connor, Ellie's ex. If anyone could shed light on the tangled web, it was him. We met at a small cafe tucked away near the river. Connor looked more tired than the last time I'd seen him, his eyes shadowed but sharp. "Ellie's not who she seems," he said quietly, stirring his coffee. "Her friends? They're like a pack, always watching, always judging, always ready to pounce." I nodded. I thought it was just me. Connor shook his head. "It's a pattern, and that photo could be someone trying to warn you or threaten you." I felt a chill. "Any idea who?" He hesitated. "There's a guy, new to the group, quiet but dangerous. Doesn't like loose ends." That afternoon, I received another message from the unknown number. "You're closer than you think, but some doors are better left closed." The warning wasn't subtle. Determined not to be intimidated, I started retracing Ellie's steps, her recent posts on social media, the people she'd been meeting, the places she'd visited. A pattern emerged, late-night meetups, whispered conversations, a network that stretched beyond what I'd imagined. I reached out to a private investigator friend, someone who owed me a favor. He agreed to help discreetly. That evening, as I sat assembling another piece of furniture, my phone buzzed with a call from Ellie. Her voice was strained, almost pleading. "Andrew, we need to talk. There are things you don't understand, things I couldn't tell you." I hesitated. Part of me wanted to hang up. The other part, curious, cautious, agreed to meet. We met in a quiet park, the air crisp with early autumn. Ellie looked different. No makeup, hair pulled back loosely, vulnerability etched into her features. She took a shaky breath. "I didn't want you to get hurt, but I was trapped. And those people around me, they're not who you think." Her eyes searched mine. "I need you to trust me, just this once." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the park in twilight, I realized the story I thought I knew was unraveling into something far more complex. And the silence that once freed me, was now filled with questions that begged for answers. And I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next. Ellie's words lingered in the cool evening air as we sat on the weathered bench beneath the amber glow of the street lamp. Her eyes, usually guarded and sharp, were now soft, almost pleading. "I was trapped," she repeated, "not just by me, but by them, the friends you saw, the shadows you don't." I wanted to believe her, but years of doubt and silence made trust a fragile thing. "Who are they, Ellie? What did they want from you?" She swallowed hard, fingers twisting the edge of her sleeve. "Control. Power. They see relationships like battles, strategies, wins, losses. I thought I could break free, but they pulled me back every time." Her confession hit me harder than I expected. The games, the silence, the staged dinners. It wasn't just manipulation, it was a battlefield. That night, I lay awake, Ellie's words spinning in my mind. I thought about Madison's warning, the mysterious shadow in the photo, the new, dangerous figure Connor mentioned. The web was bigger and darker than I ever imagined. I decided I had to face it head-on. The next day, with Patricia's help, I started gathering evidence, messages, photos, patterns of stalking and intimidation. We compiled a file, each piece a puzzle revealing the extent of the manipulation. Ellie's friends weren't just meddling, they were orchestrating a campaign to control her and anyone who threatened their grip. One evening, as I left work, I noticed a black car parked a little too long near my building. The driver's eyes met mine through the tinted window, a silent message I didn't want to decode. My phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. "You're in deeper than you know." I shared everything with Trevor and Connor. Together we planned a way forward, legal steps, protective measures, and the strength to stand firm. It wasn't just about ending a toxic relationship anymore. It was about reclaiming our lives from a darker force. But as the pieces fell into place, I couldn't shake the feeling that the real battle was just beginning. Because some silences hide more than pain. They hide secrets waiting to explode. And I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't yet see. The night before what I hoped would be a turning point, I received one last message. Trust no one. Not even her. The screen went dark, and in that silence I felt the weight of every lie, every secret, and the chilling uncertainty of what or who was truly behind it all. The final message haunted me long after the screen went dark. Trust no one. Not even her. The words echoed in the silence of my studio, thick and suffocating like the fog rolling over the river Ouse outside my window. I paced the room, heart pounding, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of truth and deception. Who could I trust? Ellie, whose vulnerability seemed genuine, but might be another layer of the game. Madison and her friends, puppeteers pulling strings in the shadows. Or the mysterious figure lurking just beyond my sight, the one Connor warned me about. I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a labyrinth of manipulation, secrets, and danger, and I was trapped in the middle. The next morning I met Trevor and Connor at our usual haunt, the Black Dog. The pub buzzed with the usual crowd, but my mind was elsewhere, calculating, preparing. "We need to end this," I said firmly. "No more silence. No more games." Trevor nodded, fists clenched. "We've got your back." Connor's eyes were hard. Time to expose them. That evening, I confronted Madison in a quiet corner of the city. Her confident facade cracked when I laid out the evidence, the texts, the fake emergencies, the harassment. "It was never personal," she whispered. "It was control." I looked her in the eye. "Control ends now." Weeks later, with legal protection in place and the harassment stopped, I sat in my studio, surrounded by the quiet I'd fought so hard to claim. The scars remained, emotional bruises and unanswered questions, but so did hope. I smiled softly, knowing I'd chosen myself. But as I turned off the lights and prepared to sleep, my phone buzzed one last time. A new message. "The game isn't over. It's just changed players." I stared at the screen, a slow smile curling on my lips. Bring it on. Because sometimes silence is not the end. It's the beginning of something far louder. And this time I was ready to write my own script.